The wind howled outside as heavy rain slammed against the windows. Inside her small countryside house, Mira Lane stirred a pot of soup on the stove. Her cottage was old but warm, filled with soft lights, bookshelves, and a quiet peace she had. Built after leaving the noise of the city. It had been almost a year since she left her corporate job in the city. She needed a break from long meetings, cold buildings, and people who only cared about numbers. Here, in the small village of Astorhill, she worked at a local bookstore and lived a quiet life. And she liked it that way. A knock at the door made her jump. Who could it be in this weather? She grabbed a shawl and walked to the door. The storm was loud, and the road outside was covered in puddles. She opened the door slowly. Standing in the rain was a man holding a little girl, both soaked to the bone. "I'm sorry to bother you," the man said, his voice steady but tired. "Our car broke down just down the hill. There's no signal, and this was the only house with lights on." Mira hesitated for just a second. The man didn't look dangerous. His coat was torn at the shoulder, and his hands trembled slightly from the cold. The girl clung to him, shivering but silent. No more than 6 or 7 years old. "Please, we just need a place to stay for the night," he said. Mira stepped aside. "Come in, you both must be freezing." The man gave a small nod of thanks and stepped in. Mira shut the door quickly to keep the cold out. "I'll get towels," she said. The girl looked up at her with wide eyes. She had curly hair and carried a small soaked teddy bear. Mira gave her a gentle smile and wrapped her in a towel first. "I'm Mira," she said softly. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Lena," the girl replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Mira turned to the man. "I'm James," he said. "Thank you, really." She nodded and handed him a towel. They sat near the fireplace after changing into dry clothes. Mira had lent them an old sweater and some soft pajamas that almost fit. She placed bowls of hot soup in front of them. Lena smiled at the first spoonful. "This is the best soup I've ever had," she said. Mira chuckled. "Well, I'm glad someone likes my cooking." James watched her, quietly thankful. His face was handsome but tired. His eyes had that faraway look, like someone who had carried too much for too long. "You live here alone?" he asked gently. "I do," she said. "Left the city last year, wanted a change." James nodded. "I understand that." There was silence for a moment, only the soft crackling of the fire filling the room. Mira looked at him curiously. "What about you? What were you doing out here in the middle of a storm?" James hesitated, then said, "We were just passing through. New job starting soon. I wanted to take the long way. Show Lena the countryside before everything becomes busy again." Mira nodded. She didn't ask more. She could tell he was careful with his words, and she respected that. Later that night, Mira set up the guest room for them. She tucked Lena into bed and gave her a small stuffed bunny from a box of old toys she had kept from her childhood. "Thank you," Lena whispered. "You're really kind." Mira smiled and brushed a curl from the girl's forehead. "Good night, little one." She turned to leave, but stopped in the hallway. James was standing there quietly. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "You don't have to," Mira replied. "Anyone would have done the same." "Not everyone would," James said, his voice soft. "Not anymore." There was a quiet pause. Something in his tone made her wonder. But before she could ask, he added, "We'll be gone in the morning. I promise we won't trouble you." "It's no trouble," Mira said. "Really?" She gave him a small nod and went to her room. The next morning, the rain had stopped. Soft sunlight spilled through the curtains. Mira got up early to make breakfast. She found Lena in the kitchen already, trying to help by placing plates on the table. "You're up early," Mira said. "Daddy said we should help." Lena replied proudly. James came in a few minutes later, now wearing a clean shirt Mira had dried overnight. "We'll leave after breakfast," he said. "The tow truck should be here soon." They sat down to eat. The mood was lighter now. Lena laughed as she told stories about her favorite cartoons, and James even smiled more than once. After the dishes were washed and the bags were packed, Mira walked them to the porch. "Thank you again," James said. "I mean it." "Take care of yourself," Mira replied. "We will." As they walked away, James turned and added, "Maybe we'll meet again." Mira smiled. "Maybe." She watched them disappear down the road, the morning sun rising behind them. She had no idea that James Blake was not just any traveler. He was about to become the new CEO of Westridge Tech. The very company Mira had once worked for. And fate had just tied their paths together again. A week had passed since that rainy night. Mira returned to the city for a short work project. The local bookstore in Astor Hill was being renovated, so she agreed to help at Westridge Tech as a temporary assistant manager for their marketing team. It was strange going back to a place she had once worked so hard to escape, but she reminded herself it was only for a month. The office building hadn't changed much. Same tall glass walls, same polished floors. But Mira walked in calmly. She was different now, stronger, simpler. She didn't need to impress anyone. She greeted a few familiar faces at the front desk and took the elevator to the 10th floor, where her old department was. As the doors opened, she stepped into the same space she had once rushed through every day. People stared for a moment, surprised to see her again. "Myra Lane? You're back?" said Tasha, her former teammate. "Only for a short project," Myra smiled. "Just helping out while the new management settles in. New CEO's starting today," Tasha whispered. "Some big shot from overseas." The board kept it quiet. "No one knows what he looks like." Mira raised an eyebrow. "That's unusual," Tasha nodded. "They say he's young but really sharp. A family man too. No one's met him yet." Mira didn't think much of it. She went to her desk and started sorting through files. A month would go by quickly, she told herself. Later that morning, the department heads gathered in the main conference room. Mira was asked to attend too, just to take notes. People whispered as they waited for the CEO to arrive. The door opened. In walked James Blake, the same man who had stood on her porch just days ago, soaked and shivering, with his little daughter in his arms. Mira froze. He was wearing a suit now, clean, pressed, and confident. His hair was combed neatly, and he carried a calm strength that filled the room. But his eyes still held the same kindness she had seen that night by the fireplace. He glanced around the room, and then their eyes met. He paused for half a second, but didn't say anything. "Good morning," James began, standing at the head of the table. "I'm James Blake, your new CEO. I believe in strong teams, honest communication, and purpose-driven work. I know change is hard, but I'm here to work with all of you, not above you." The team nodded, a few people writing notes quickly. Myra didn't move. Her heart was racing, but she kept her face calm. After the meeting ended, James walked out. Without another glance at her, Tasha leaned over and whispered, "He seems different, right?" Mira just nodded. That afternoon, Mira received a message. "Mr. Blake would like to speak with you privately." She walked to his office, unsure of what to expect. James stood near the window when she entered. He turned, his face serious. "Close the door, please." She did. For a moment, neither spoke. Then James said, "I didn't know you worked here." "I didn't, not until yesterday," Mira replied. James gave a short laugh. "Of all the people I could run into, the kind woman who let me and my daughter sleep in her home." "You said you were starting a new job," Mira said. "I didn't lie," he replied. She folded her arms. "Why didn't you tell me who you were?" "Would you have let me in if I had?" She thought about it, then quietly said, "Yes, I would have." There was a soft silence. "I didn't expect to find you here," James admitted. "But I'm glad I did. You helped me when I needed it." No questions, no judgment. Mira stayed quiet. She didn't know what to say. "I'd like to work with you more closely," James continued. "If you're willing." Myra's eyes narrowed slightly. "You don't owe me anything. I'm not offering out of debt," James said. "I just know talent when I see it, and I trust you." That word trust carried weight. Too many people in her past had only offered empty praise or polite smiles. But his words felt honest. "I'll think about it," she replied. Over the next few days, Mira worked closely with James's team. She was surprised at how different things felt. Under his leadership, the office wasn't cold or tense anymore. James took time to listen. He asked questions. He didn't raise his voice. And most of all, he noticed people, not just numbers. He brought Lena to work one morning, and the whole floor melted. Lena ran up to Mira with a big grin. "Mira, I made this for you." She handed her a small drawing, a stick figure of Myra, James, and Lena standing in front of a house. Myra knelt. "Thank you, sweetheart. I love it." James watched from the doorway. His expression warmed. As the weeks passed, Mira started feeling something she hadn't in years: belonging. One afternoon, Mira and James stood by the coffee machine after a long meeting. "You've changed a lot here already," she said. James shrugged. "Maybe, but I still have a lot to learn. You're not like the last CEOs I worked with." "I'm not like most CEOs," he replied. "I never wanted the title. I just wanted to build something better." Mira looked at him. "Do you think you're doing that?" He met her eyes. "With people like you around, maybe I am." There was a pause. A quiet understanding passed between them, but neither spoke about that night again. Not yet. The days turned into 2 weeks, and Mira settled into the flow of the office again. Her work was sharp, focused, and respected. People from other departments began asking her advice. Some remembered her from her old time at Westridge Tech, but most were surprised to see how confident and calm she had become. Behind the calm, though, whispers had started. "She's always in the CEO's office. Wasn't she gone for almost a year? Do they know each other outside of work?" Mira heard the whispers but didn't react. She had learned to ignore background noise. It was easier to focus on the work, on building real things, solving real problems. But one afternoon, she overheard something that stopped her cold. "She's the one who left during the Phoenix Project scandal, right?" "Yeah. People say she knew what was happening and still walked away." Mira stood just around the corner, unseeing. Her stomach twisted. The Phoenix Project, that was the reason she had left the company before. It had been one of the biggest marketing launches in the company's history. But at the last moment, problems were found in the tech product they were promoting. Several people had tried to cover it up. Mira had found out and tried to stop the campaign. She had gone to her manager. No one listened. So she had resigned, quietly, cleanly. She didn't go to the press. She didn't ruin anyone's name. She had just walked away and disappeared to Astor Hill. Now it was all coming back. That evening, James called her into his office again. "Myra, I need to ask," he said as she sat down. "What happened during the Phoenix Project?" She stared at him, surprised. "People are talking," he added. "I want to hear it from you." She nodded slowly. "I found out the tech wasn't ready," she said. "They were rushing the launch to beat another company to market. I told my department head. I even wrote a report." James leaned forward, listening carefully. "They told me to keep quiet. Said it wasn't my place to interfere with engineering. I didn't want to be part of a lie, so I resigned." "You didn't go public with it?" "No," Mira said. "I wasn't trying to destroy the company. I just didn't want to be part of something false." James was silent for a long moment. "You did the right thing," he said finally. She looked up, surprised. "You believe me?" "Yes, and I'll look into it myself." Mira gave a small nod. She felt something loosen in her chest, a tight knot that had sat there for a year. For the first time, Someone had listened without turning away. The next morning, James held a private meeting with the company's legal team. He asked for the original Phoenix Project records. He asked tough questions. People noticed. Some of the older directors became nervous. Some even tried to make excuses, but James was calm and firm. We fix problems here. We don't bury them. By the end of the week, he had found the truth. Mira's warnings had been ignored, and the reports she had written had been hidden in old archives. He didn't make a big show of it. No press. No punishments, but he did send an internal message. To all departments, integrity matters more than image. Let this serve as a reminder. Those who speak the truth should never be pushed out. We move forward, together, with honesty. Mira read the message at her desk and felt her throat tighten. She didn't cry, but she did smile. That same day, James invited her for coffee at the small cafe across the street. They sat by the window as the city buzzed around them. You didn't have to send that message, Mira said. I did, James replied. You saved this company once. I just made sure people knew. Mira looked down at her cup. Still, I don't like attention. Then I'll say thank you quietly, James smiled. She smiled too. There was a soft pause. Then he asked, Wygant, you come back? She thought for a moment. Honestly, I wasn't sure. Maybe I just needed to know if I still belonged, or maybe I was curious about the new CEO, James laughed. I was curious about the woman who made soup and opened her door to strangers. Their eyes met for a moment, quiet and warm. Then Lena ran into the cafe with a drawing in her hands. Daddy, look, she cried, holding up a picture of a treehouse. Can we build this? James took it and studied it seriously. Only if Myra helps design it. Lena turned to Myra. Will you help? Mira smiled and said, of course. Back at the office, the whispers had changed. Now they said, she's the reason the company didn't collapse. She stood up for what was right. She's different, and so is he. Mira no longer felt like she was walking through shadows. The halls were bright again. Her place was clear, but something deeper had started to grow. Something neither she nor James had expected. Respect had turned into trust. Trust had become connection, and connection was quietly turning into something else. Something neither of them could name yet. 2 weeks later, Mira took a few days off to return to Astor Hill. The city was getting too loud again. She had promised herself not to let the fast life pull her away from the quiet peace she had found in the countryside. She packed a small bag and drove through the winding roads, passing tall trees and golden fields. When she reached her cottage, the air smelled like pine and earth. Birds sang softly from the branches. Everything was still the same, but Mira was not the same anymore. She walked through her house slowly, touching the books, the little wooden table, the fireplace that had once warmed 2 unexpected guests. She smiled, remembering the stormy night James and Lena had appeared. She didn't know what they were now, friends, co-workers, something more? She wasn't sure. But she knew she missed them. Later that evening, as she was watering the plants near her porch, she heard the soft sound of tires crunching gravel. A black SUV stopped near her gate. The back door opened, and Lena jumped out with her usual excitement. Mira. Mira's eyes widened. Lena? Then James stepped out, carrying a small basket. I hope you don't mind, he said with a smile. Lena begged for a weekend in the countryside, and honestly, so did I. Mira laughed. You too again? I should start charging rent. Lena ran into her arms, giggling. Mira hugged her tightly. I missed you, Lena said. I missed you too. James walked up slowly. We brought food. I didn't want to show up empty-handed. Mira looked at him. Well, since you've already driven all the way here, you can stay. That evening, the 3 of them sat around the fire again. This time, no one was wet, cold, or unsure. The house felt warmer than ever. Lena told stories about school, and Mira made her favorite noodles with vegetables and cheese. Later, when Lena fell asleep on the couch with her teddy bear in her arms, James and Mira stepped outside onto the porch. The sky was clear, full of stars. The wind was gentle. James leaned on the railing, hands in his pockets. "She's happy here," he said. "Peaceful." "She always seems happy," Mira replied. "Only since that night," James said. "Before we met you, things were rough. After Lena's mother passed, I was trying to balance everything. Work, grief, fatherhood. I wasn't doing great." Mira looked at him, surprised. He had never talked about Lena's mother before. "I'm sorry," she said softly. James nodded. "I don't say it often, but I think that night changed everything for us." They stood there in silence for a while, the stars blinking above them. Then James looked at her. "Why did you really leave this place and come back to the city?" Mira took a deep breath. "I thought I had moved on, that I didn't belong in the corporate world anymore. But then I met people who made it feel different, honest, real." James smiled. "People like me?" Mira gave him a playful glance. "Maybe." The next day, they walked through the village. Locals waved at Mira and smiled at James and Lena. They bought fresh fruit, visited a small pond, and even stopped by the bookstore Mira used to work in. Lena picked out 3 storybooks and begged Mira to read them all that night. In the afternoon, they returned to the cottage for tea. The sun was starting to set, casting a warm orange light over the garden. James sat across from Mira on the porch. "Steps, I want to offer you something," he said. She looked at him, curious. "Not just a job," he continued. "I want you to help lead Westridge Tech with me. Not just in name, but in action. Your ideas, your honesty, your heart. The company needs that." Mira was silent for a moment. "That's a big step." "Yes," he said, "but I trust you." She stared out at the field for a while. The wind brushed through the tall grass gently. Then she asked, "What would my role be?" "Creative Strategy Director," James said. "You'll guide where we go, what we stand for. I don't want to run this alone." Mira smiled. "You're not afraid of giving too much power away?" "I'm more afraid of building something that has no soul." There was something in his voice genuine and clear. It wasn't about titles or control. It was about building something. "Right. I'll think about it," Mira said. "But I'm not saying no," James smiled. "That's all I ask." That evening, they built a small fire in the backyard and roasted marshmallows. Lena sang a silly song while Mira and James laughed. The night was filled with comfort, like a family gathering that felt natural and easy. Before bed, Lena looked at Mira and asked, "Can we come here every weekend?" Mira chuckled. "If your dad agrees." James looked at her. "I already do." For the first time in a long while, Mira felt something warm grow inside her chest. She didn't know where things were going exactly, but it felt like home. Back in the city, the mood inside Westridge Tech was shifting. The company had slowly started to feel different. Brighter, lighter, more people were speaking up in meetings. Departments were sharing ideas instead of hiding them. James Blake's leadership was unlike anything the team had known before, and Mira's return had become a turning point. It was her idea that started it all, a new platform. Something bold. A service that would connect people and technology in a more human way, not just another product, but something with meaning. She called it Project Root. The name is about getting back to the roots. Mira explained in the boardroom. Trust, honesty, real help, not just smart screens and fast results. People want to feel understood, not studied. She stood confidently in front of the room, a simple slide behind her showing clean lines and natural colors. Her voice was steady. James watched from his seat, impressed. He had seen many presentations in his career, But something about Myra's was different. It didn't rely on flashy numbers or loud promises. It made people feel. The board members looked at each other. One leaned forward. "And you believe this could be our next direction?" Mira nodded. "I do. Not just for money, but for meaning. The world's changing. We have a chance to be ahead of it. But only if we do it right." Silence filled the room. Then James stood up. "I support this project," he said. "And I think Mira should lead it." Some of the board members shifted. Uncomfortably, one spoke up. "She's only recently returned. Are we sure she's the right choice for something this large?" James met his eyes. "I am. Because when others ran from truth, she stood by it. When this company needed clarity, she brought it." Another board member nodded slowly. "We'll need numbers. A rollout plan, market testing. You'll get all of it," Mira said. "I'll prove it's worth building." That afternoon, back in her small office, Mira was going through notes when Tasha came in. "I saw your pitch," she said. "You had them sitting up straight for once." Mira smiled. "I wasn't sure it worked." "Oh, it did. Everyone's talking." Tasha sat on the edge of the desk. "You know, people thought you disappeared because you were afraid. But now, they're seeing it differently." "I wasn't afraid," Myra said softly. "I was just tired of fighting alone." Tasha nodded. "Well, you're not alone anymore." Those words stayed with Mira for the rest of the day. That weekend, Mira returned to Astor Hill with a bag full of sketches and plans. She wanted quiet space to think. But as she walked up the path to her cottage, she stopped in surprise. The yard had changed. A small wooden treehouse was now standing between the old oak trees, still unfinished, but clearly in progress. A few boards were painted in soft colors, and a little sign hung from a nail. "Lena's Sky Castle." Mira laughed out loud. James popped out from behind the tree with a hammer in his hand. He looked proud and a little embarrassed. "She wanted to surprise you," he said, "so we started early." Lena came running out from the back of the cottage. "Do you like it?" "I love it," Mira said, still smiling. They spent the rest of the evening painting, laughing and talking about nothing too serious. It felt like they were building more than a treehouse. They were building something deeper. Late that night, after Lena had gone to sleep, Mira and James sat outside under the stars again. Mira pulled out her sketch pad and showed James her new designs. "For Project Root, I want it to feel natural," she said. "Like something that fits into life without stealing it." James nodded. "Not tech that takes over, but tech that helps." "Yes," Mira said, "exactly that." He looked at her, his expression serious now. "You know, I've worked with a lot of smart people, brilliant minds, but very few have this." "This?" He pointed gently to her. "Heart, this clarity, this quiet strength." She looked away, slightly shy. "It hasn't always felt like a strength." "It is now," he said. There was a pause. Then Mira asked, "Do you think all of this, is moving too fast?" James thought for a moment. "No," he said honestly. "It feels just right." Monday morning at the office, Mira presented her first draft of the Project Root rollout plan. It included partnerships with education centers, small businesses, and mental wellness groups. "It's not just for the rich," she said. "It should reach everyone." The team clapped when she finished. A programmer raised his hand. "Can I help with the back-end interface?" A designer added, "I have ideas for the app's look. It should feel like nature." Another voice said, "This is the best thing we've done in years." Mira smiled, not just because of the praise, but because for the first time, the office didn't feel like a job. It felt like purpose. James stood at the back, watching quietly. He didn't interrupt or take credit, because he knew this was Myra's moment. After the meeting, he walked into her office. "You were brilliant," he said. Mira was still holding her notes, surprised and slightly breathless. "I didn't think it would go that well." You believed in something. People followed that. She looked at him. What if it doesn't work? He smiled. Then we try again. That's what builders do. For a second, she just stood there, thinking. Then she asked quietly, "And what are we building, James?" He didn't answer right away, but he stepped closer and said softly, "Something real." The days passed quickly as Project Root moved forward. Mira was busier than ever, but she didn't mind. The work felt meaningful. Every meeting, every design, every conversation built something real. People from every corner of the company wanted to be involved. Even Lena had made a small paper logo for it, 2 hands holding a green leaf. Mira kept it on her desk, right next to her notes. One evening, Mira stayed late at the office. Most people had gone home. The city lights glowed outside. The windows soft and quiet. James walked in, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need this," he said. Mira smiled. "You know me well." They sat together by the long table, not as CEO and project head, but as 2 people who had slowly built something important, both inside the company and maybe between each other. James looked over her plans. "You've taken this idea and turned it into a vision," he said. "I'm proud of what you've done." "Thank you," Mira replied. "But I didn't do it alone." James looked at her, his voice soft. "You've changed things here. People feel it," Mira nodded. "It feels different to me too." He leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. "Do you miss the quiet days in Astor Hill?" "Sometimes," Mira said. "But it's strange. I feel at peace even here now." "That's because you're not running anymore," he said gently. "You're building." That weekend, Mira invited James and Lena back to Astor Hill. But this time, it wasn't just a visit. She had decided to move back, but not to hide. She would live in Astor Hill and work remotely, visiting the city office. A few days each month. With James's support, it was possible. When they arrived, Lena ran straight to her sky castle treehouse and climbed the rope ladder. James helped Mira carry boxes inside the cottage. "You're sure about this?" he asked as they placed a box on the kitchen counter. Mira looked around at the house. It felt alive again. "Yes," she said. "This is home, and now I don't have to choose between peace and purpose." James nodded. "You've made it." Both. They unpacked for a while, then took a walk to the village market. Locals smiled and waved at Mira, and now also at James and Lena. The 3 of them looked like they belonged together, even if no one had said it out loud yet. That night, they sat outside on a picnic blanket. The stars were out again, brighter than ever. A small fire crackled nearby, and Lena had fallen asleep beside them with her head on Myra's lap. James looked at Myra. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course." "I was never planning to take the CEO job," he said. "I only agreed because I wanted to change something in the world. Something that mattered." "You've already done that," she said. He nodded. "But now, I want more than just work. I want to build a life that feels like this." Mira looked down at Lena, sleeping peacefully. James continued. "I don't know exactly where this is going, Mira, but I know it feels right." Mira looked at him, her voice steady but full of feeling. "So do I." They didn't need big words. The silence said enough. The next morning, they had breakfast on the porch, fresh eggs, fruit, and toast with honey. Lena painted the side of her treehouse while Mira and James drank tea and reviewed updates from the office. One message stood out. A large tech journal had heard about Project Root. They wanted to do a feature on it and on the woman leading it. James looked at Myra. "Are you ready for that?" Mira laughed nervously. "Not really, but maybe it's time." "Then I'll stand beside you," he said. She smiled. "I know you will." The article came out a week later, the quiet force behind tech's boldest new idea. It spoke about Mira's journey, her decision to walk away from a broken system, her return, her values, her vision. It didn't mention James by name, but it did mention The leadership that had given her space to rise again. Mira read the article in her kitchen, holding a warm cup of tea. James had sent her a simple message: "You earned this." And the world needed to hear your story. Later that night, Mira stepped outside and stared at the stars. She had once been just a quiet woman in a small house, unsure of her place in the world. Now she was helping reshape a company, a community, and maybe something even bigger. She didn't have all the answers, but she had courage again, and love. Perhaps love too. 3 months had passed since the launch of Project Root. What started as an idea in a quiet meeting room had now become a movement across the tech world. Westridge Tech's name was appearing in news articles and business journals, not for profit charts, but for something far more rare: trust. The app had rolled out in schools, wellness centers, and small towns. People wrote emails about how the technology made them feel supported, not watched. It helped organize lives without controlling them. It gave reminders without rushing. It listened without pushing. And at the heart of it all was Mira Lane. She worked partly from her cottage in Astor Hill and partly in the city. Some weeks she stayed at the office for meetings. Other weeks she hosted virtual sessions from her kitchen table, her dog barking in the background and wildflowers blooming in a jar by her laptop. James Blake often joined her in those sessions, sitting across from her, sipping tea, and watching her with quiet pride. They had grown close, but still hadn't placed a label on what they were. They simply were. One Friday morning, Mira received a letter, not an email, but a handwritten letter from a school in a small mountain village. A teacher wrote, "One of my students used the voice journal feature in Project Root to talk about how she was feeling. She's only 10, and no one knew she was struggling. The app encouraged her to open up. Because of that, we got her help. You saved someone." Mira read the words slowly. Then she folded the letter and placed it beside Lena's hand-drawn logo on her desk. That evening, she walked outside and found James working in the garden. Lena was nearby, collecting rocks and pretending to run her own leaf market. Mira held out the letter to James. He read it quietly, then looked up at her. "Everything you hoped it would be," he said. "More than I imagined," she replied. Later that weekend, James made a quiet dinner: pasta, roasted vegetables, and soft bread. After Lena had gone to bed, he sat across from Mira at the wooden table. The candlelight flickered gently. "I've been thinking about something," he said. Mira looked at him with soft eyes. "Go on." "I've spent a long time building things for work, but I want to build something personal now. Something lasting." She tilted her head slightly, curious, calm. "I want to move to Astor Hill," he said simply. "Not just visit. Live here. Raise Lena here. Build roots." Mira stared at him, surprised. "You'd leave the city?" "Not leave," he said. "Just live differently. I'll go to the city when needed. But our headquarters doesn't have to be glass and steel." He paused. "And I'd like to be closer to you, if you'll allow that." Mira's heart beat softly in her chest. She looked around the house, at the quiet porch, the flower pots, the treehouse in the backyard, and then at James, the man who had once stood outside her door, soaked from the rain, holding a child and nothing else. "You'd really do that?" she asked. James reached across the table and gently placed his hand over hers. "For you? For Lena? For something real?" "Yes, every time." A few weeks later, the news spread Westridge Tech would open a second headquarters in Astor Hill, focused on research and creative design. A small nature-inspired campus would be built, with walking paths, open-air meeting rooms, and a treehouse reading center designed by Lena herself. People said it was bold. People said it was strange. But those who visited understood. It felt like the future, but shaped by the past. And it worked. On the 1-year anniversary of Project Root, Mira stood in front of a small crowd in Astor Hill. Staff, villagers, students, and families gathered to celebrate. Lena wore a green dress and handed out paper flowers she had made with her friends. Mira gave a short speech. I left the city once because I thought I didn't belong. I came back because I realized I could still make a difference. But I stayed because I found people who made the journey worth it. Her eyes met James's in the crowd. Today is not about a company, she continued. It's about connection. Between people, between purpose and peace, between who we were and who we are becoming. The audience clapped. Not loudly, but warmly like the wind through tall grass. That night, Mira sat on the porch steps, watching the stars with James and Lena beside her. Lena leaned on her shoulder. James rested his hand gently on hers. I don't know what the future holds, Mira said softly. James replied, that's the best part. We get to write it. She smiled. Not everything in life came in perfect plans or polished packages. Some of the best things arrived unexpected, like a knock on the door during a storm. Or a chance to begin again. And this time, Mira wasn't afraid, because she had found not just a purpose, not just a voice, but a home.